In early 2022, as Russian forces advanced into Ukraine, a surprising twist unfolded, not in the halls of NATO or the United Nations, but in the offices of a private tech company in California. With Ukraine's military communications failing, the government turned not to NATO, but to a billionaire. Within days, Elon Musk activated his private satellite network, Starlink, above Ukraine. And just like that, a single man, unelected and thousands of miles away, had changed the dynamics of a European battlefield. At the same time, in another part of the world, a teenage girl with a cardboard sign was standing outside her country's parliament. Within a year, Greta Thunberg had become a global icon. She held no official title, yet she shaped the global conversation on climate change more effectively than many diplomats or presidents ever could. So, how do we explain this? How can individuals without armies, treaties, or formal power shape the course of global politics? In this video, we're going to explore two powerful but often overlooked forces in international relations: individuals and epistemic communities. Together, these actors are reshaping how power works in the international system. They don't represent governments, but they shape global norms, influence policy outcomes, and redefine what's politically possible. And in a world increasingly shaped by ideas and influence, understanding these actors is essential to understanding international relations itself.
Let's begin with the first of our two people-powered actors in global politics, the highly empowered individuals, or HEIs. In international relations, we often focus on large-scale entities, states, organizations, militaries, alliances, but in recent decades we've seen something remarkable. Individuals operating outside formal institutions influencing the course of international politics in profound ways. These highly empowered individuals aren't just activists or celebrities. They shape norms, set agendas, and influence policy without holding office, commanding troops, or leading delegations. So, what makes someone a highly empowered individual? Typically, they have access to global platforms, whether that's media, diplomacy, or digital technology. They can mobilize mass publics across borders and derive power from symbolic legitimacy, charisma, wealth, or moral authority. Their influence often comes down to their ability to shape global narratives, what counts as a crisis, who deserves attention, and which policies seem acceptable. We can think of highly empowered individuals as falling into one of three broad types. The first is the moral entrepreneur. This is the activist, the truth teller, the norm setter. Their influence doesn't come from money or institutional power, but from the perceived righteousness of their cause and their ability to speak to global audiences. Take Malala Yousafzai. After surviving a Taliban assassination attempt as a teenager, she became a global voice for girls' education. She addressed the United Nations, met with world leaders, and won the Nobel Peace Prize, all while remaining a private citizen. Or consider Greta Thunberg. What began as a lone school strike for climate in Sweden became a global movement, Fridays for Future. Her speeches challenged global leaders on the world stage. Her moral clarity cut through political gridlock, and she's changed the tone and urgency of climate discourse worldwide. The power of moral entrepreneurs comes not from representing governments, but from speaking to a broader moral consensus. Next is the philanthro-capitalist. These are the billionaires who shape global politics not through elections, but through financial leverage. They fund health campaigns, education initiatives, technological research, even climate programs on a scale that sometimes rivals states. Consider the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. With a budget larger than many national health ministries, it's helped fund global vaccination efforts, combat malaria, and shape the priorities of institutions like the World Health Organization. But their influence also raises questions. Should unelected individuals be able to set public health priorities for the world? What happens when private funding drives public policy? As the line between philanthropy and policy blurs, these actors force us to rethink ideas about democratic accountability in global governance. Finally, we have the technologists. They derive power from control over infrastructure, especially the digital or technological systems the world increasingly depends on. Elon Musk is perhaps the most striking example. His companies, SpaceX, Starlink, Tesla, aren't just commercial ventures. Their technologies provide satellite internet in war zones, advance global energy transitions, and influence debates over AI regulation. In Ukraine, Musk's decision to activate or limit Starlink access had direct strategic implications. One person, not a general or a foreign minister, was suddenly in a position to influence a war in Europe. Similarly, Mark Zuckerberg's Meta, through its platforms, has become a de facto public square in many countries, shaping the entire information ecosystem. Its role is particularly profound in countries with less developed traditional media outlets. In Myanmar, for example, Facebook functioned less as a social platform and more as the internet itself. This gave the platform immense, unelected power over political discourse. UN investigators concluded that the platform played a key role in amplifying hate speech that incited violence against the Rohingya minority, raising urgent questions about the global political responsibilities of tech companies. These technologists sit atop private empires that have real geopolitical consequences. That reach brings enormous power, but also responsibility and sometimes real harm. Of course, these categories often overlap. Elon Musk is both a technologist and a philanthropist. The Gates Foundation supports technology and health, and moral entrepreneurs may later become institutional figures. But these categories help us see the different ways individuals accumulate and exercise global power, whether through moral clarity, capital investment, or technological control. But not all global influence comes from individuals in the spotlight. Some of the most powerful actors in global politics work quietly, behind the scenes, shaping how governments understand the world. The term epistemic community was first introduced by political scientist Peter Haas in 1992 to explain how expert knowledge shapes international cooperation, especially on complex problems like environmental policy or pandemic response. An epistemic community is a transnational network of experts who share a common understanding of a problem, agree on what kinds of data or methods are valid, propose similar policy solutions, and are trusted by governments and international organizations. They might be scientists, economists, or technical specialists. What unites them is their perceived credibility, their status as legitimate experts. For constructivist thinkers in international relations, these communities are incredibly important. Remember, constructivists argue that international politics is shaped not just by power or interests, but by ideas, norms, and shared knowledge. Epistemic communities are the engines that create that shared knowledge. They help define global problems, and with that, shape what kinds of actions are seen as legitimate. In practice, states often face complex problems they don't fully understand. When that happens, they turn to these expert communities to help define the problems, offer technically sound solutions, and reduce uncertainty. By framing the issue, epistemic communities help shape the entire global policy agenda. Let's look at a classic example, the Montreal Protocol, one of the most successful environmental treaties in history. In the 1970s and 80s, scientists warned that chemicals called CFCs were damaging the Earth's vital ozone layer. At first, there was political hesitation due to the scientific complexity and the unclear economic costs of addressing the issue. But a global epistemic community of atmospheric scientists built a strong, unified consensus. CFCs were the problem, and phasing them out was the only solution. Their expert voice gave governments the scientific and political cover they needed to act. The result was the 1987 Montreal Protocol, widely seen as a direct outcome of expert consensus shaping the global response. A powerful epistemic community today is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. Established by the United Nations, the IPCC includes thousands of scientists who assess climate science and issue reports that set the scientific baseline for all global climate negotiations. When diplomats meet at climate summits, they aren't debating whether climate change is real. That's been settled by the epistemic community. Instead, they're negotiating how to act on the knowledge that the IPCC has provided. In this way, the IPCC doesn't just provide data, it helps to define the problem and to narrow the range of legitimate political responses. But epistemic communities aren't without their critiques. Whose knowledge counts? Is science ever truly neutral? These expert networks, often rooted in the global north, may exclude local voices or promote technocratic solutions that overlook social and cultural contexts. And this raises important questions about accountability, especially when unelected experts shape decisions with major global consequences.
So, whether it's an individual like Elon Musk controlling satellites or an epistemic community of scientists shaping climate agreements, the lesson is clear. Power in international politics is no longer limited to states. It's also wielded by individuals and networks who use moral authority, wealth, technology, and knowledge to set agenda and define realities. Yet, both forms of power share a common challenge: accountability. They operate outside traditional democratic structures, forcing us to ask new questions about legitimacy in a globalized world. Still, the actors we've explored, NGOs, corporations, and individuals, operate largely within the international system. In our next video, we're going to turn to those who seek to destroy it, violent non-state actors.